Welcome back to our channel. Today we begin one of the most powerful journeys in the entire Bible, a story of betrayal, faith, and destiny. It is the story of a boy who dared to dream, and those dreams carried him from the depths of a pit to the throne of a kingdom. This is the story of Joseph in Egypt. Stay with us, because the twists in this story are unlike anything you expect. And if you want more stories told with this level of depth and emotion, don't forget to subscribe. The land of Canaan lay quiet under the burning sun. Among the tents of Jacob's household, one boy stood out, Joseph, the 11th son, born to Jacob in his old age through Rachel, the wife he had loved most deeply. Jacob's heart favored the boy, and it showed. He gave Joseph a coat, not just any garment, but a robe, woven with many colors, a symbol of honor and affection. To the eyes of his brothers, it was more than cloth. It was proof that Joseph was loved above them all. Resentment grew like a slow fire. His brothers watched him with narrowed eyes, their hearts boiling with jealousy. For Joseph was not only the favored son, he was a dreamer. One night, Joseph's sleep carried him into visions. At dawn, he rushed to share them with his brothers. "Listen to this dream I had," he said eagerly. "We were binding sheaves in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to mine. The silence that followed was sharp, their faces hardened. Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" Their hatred deepened. But Joseph dreamed again, and this time, the vision was even greater. "I had another dream," he told them, his voice trembling with awe. "The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." Even Jacob, though puzzled, rebuked him. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" The words hung heavy. His brothers' envy turned to rage. What kind of boy spoke of such things? What arrogance was this? Yet, beneath their anger, fear also lingered. For dreams, in their land, were not mere illusions. They were glimpses of destiny. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were grazing their flocks near Shechem. Clad in his colorful robe, he walked toward them across the fields, unaware of the storm about to fall. From a distance they saw him coming. His robe shimmered under the sun, a banner of favoritism that mocked them, and their whispers turned dark. "Here comes the dreamer," one said. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We'll say a wild beast devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Murder brewed in their hearts, but Reuben, the eldest, spoke quickly. "Do not shed blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him." Reuben planned to rescue Joseph later, to return him to his father. But the others agreed to the first part, blind to his secret plan. When Joseph reached them, their anger burst. They stripped off his robe of many colors, the symbol of his father's love, and with rough hands dragged him to the pit. The boy cried out, confused, terrified, but the earth swallowed his voice. The pit was empty, no water, only darkness. Above, his brothers sat to eat, their laughter sharp and cruel. But as they ate, a caravan appeared on the horizon, Ishmaelite traders, their camels carrying spices bound for Egypt. Judah spoke with a calculating tone. "What profit is it if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." The others agreed. They hauled Joseph from the pit, ignoring his pleas, and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. The traders bound him and led him away, his figure shrinking into the horizon as the desert swallowed him. The brothers dipped his robe in goat's blood and brought it to Jacob. His cries filled the camp as he tore his garments. "It is my son's robe. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph is surely torn to pieces." But Joseph was not dead. He was alive, and on his way to Egypt, a land of gods and kings, where his dreams would one day rise from the ashes of betrayal. The chains clinked with every step as the caravan pushed through the desert. The boy who had once worn a robe of many colors now walked bound, his wrists rubbed raw by the ropes. The laughter of the traders echoed against the sand dunes. To them, Joseph was just another piece of merchandise, a young body with strong arms that could be sold for silver in Egypt. But inside his heart, confusion and pain raged like a storm. He thought of his father's face, of the grief he must now bear. He thought of his brother's eyes, filled not with love but with hatred. The pit still echoed in his mind, the cries unanswered, the darkness swallowing him. But deeper than the pain, there lingered the faint memory of his dreams. Could they still mean something, or had they been nothing but illusions? Egypt rose on the horizon like another world. Towers of stone, temples lined with statues of gods, the Nile flowing like a river of life through its heart. For Joseph, the boy from Canaan, it was overwhelming. Strange tongues, painted walls, golden idols, the land of promise had given way to the land of chains. At the slave market, Joseph was sold again. His price, 20 silver coins. His buyer, Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, a man of power and discipline. Under Potiphar's household, Joseph learned the language of Egypt, the customs of its people, and there, something remarkable began to happen. Everything Joseph touched seemed to prosper. The work of his hands flourished, the fields he tended bore fruit, the accounts he managed grew orderly. Potiphar watched closely and soon realized there was something different about this Hebrew boy. The gods of Egypt had not blessed him. Something greater was at work. Potiphar entrusted him with more and more, until at last Joseph was placed over his entire household. A slave had become a steward. In the eyes of men, Joseph was bound. In the eyes of God, Joseph was being prepared. But trials are never far from favor. Potiphar's wife watched Joseph with hungry eyes. Day after day, she whispered temptations. "Come to me," she said. "Lie with me." Joseph's heart burned with conflict. He was far from home. No father to watch, no brothers to judge, no one to see, except God. And to Joseph, that was enough. "How could I do this great evil," he answered her, "and sin against God?" But her persistence grew. One day, when the house was empty, she caught him by his garment. Joseph fled, tearing himself free, leaving the cloak in her hands. Her desire turned to fury. She screamed, calling the servants. "See, he tried to violate me." When Potiphar returned, rage filled his heart. He believed his wife's words over the faithfulness of his steward. Without trial, without defense, Joseph was seized and thrown into the king's prison, a place of iron and shadows. The pit had returned, but this time its walls were stone. Inside the prison, Joseph sat alone, betrayed again, first by his brothers, now by his master's house. The robe of many colors was long gone. Even the robe of stewardship had been stripped away. All that remained was a boy becoming a man, clinging to the unseen hand of God. And yet, even there, something stirred. The keeper of the prison soon noticed what Potiphar had seen. Joseph was different, faithful, diligent. The prison itself began to prosper under his care. And though chains still bound him, the whispers of destiny had not gone silent. The dreams had not died. The iron bars closed behind Joseph with a heavy clang, the sound echoing down the dark corridors like a verdict. His world had shrunk to stone walls and locked doors, but his spirit refused to be broken. He had lost his robe, his freedom, his honor, but not his faith. The prison was a place of despair. Chains rattled, groans filled the night, and hope was a stranger. Yet even there, Joseph carried something unseen. His hands worked with diligence, his voice carried calm, and soon the keeper of the prison noticed. "This Hebrew is different," the guard whispered to others. And so Joseph, though still a prisoner, was entrusted with responsibility. He oversaw tasks, managed others, and brought order where there had only been chaos. But God's favor was not only for discipline, it was also for revelation. One morning, 2 new prisoners were brought in. They were no ordinary men. One was Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, the other his chief baker. Both cast into prison after offending the king. Their faces carried the weight of disgrace. Men who once walked in royal courts now reduced to stone floors and iron chains. Joseph served them as he did all others, but he noticed something unusual. One morning both men looked deeply troubled. "Why do you look so sad today?" Joseph asked. The cupbearer sighed. "We each had a dream, but there is no one here to interpret them." Joseph's eyes steadied. His voice, quiet but sure, broke through the gloom. "Interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream there was a vine before me. On the vine were 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, pressed them into his cup, and placed it in his hand." Joseph listened carefully, then answered with confidence. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. You will once again place Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you did before." Hope lit the man's eyes. Then the baker, encouraged, spoke of his dream. "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." Joseph's heart grew heavy. His words came slower, but he did not hide the truth. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat your flesh." Silence followed. The cupbearer clung to hope. The baker shuddered with dread. 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, the dreams proved true. The cupbearer was restored, the baker executed, and Joseph, the man who interpreted dreams, remained in prison. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph had spoken one request: "Remember me when it is well with you. Mention me to Pharaoh, so I might be released from this prison. For I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve these chains." But when the cupbearer returned to Pharaoh's side, he forgot. Days passed, then weeks, then months. The seasons changed, but Joseph remained behind bars. Yet even in delay, God was working. For the gift within Joseph, the gift of dreams and their meanings, was being sharpened in the silence of waiting. The prison walls had become Joseph's world. Days turned into months, and months into years. The seasons outside shifted, but for Joseph, time moved slowly. Measured not by the sun but by the rhythm of chains and the silence of forgotten promises, the cupbearer had returned to Pharaoh's side, restored just as Joseph had said. But Joseph himself had been left behind, buried in the shadows of Egypt's dungeon. And yet, God's purpose was ripening, like fruit hidden under leaves, unseen until the right moment. One night, Pharaoh himself was troubled. Dreams came to him, vivid and haunting. He stood by the Nile, and from the river rose 7 sleek, fat cows, grazing peacefully among the reeds. But suddenly, 7 gaunt and ugly cows emerged, their bones showing through their skin. They devoured the fat cows, yet remained just as thin and wretched as before. Pharaoh woke in fear, but when sleep returned, another dream seized him. 7 heads of grain, healthy and full, swayed in the field. Then, 7 thin and scorched heads sprouted, blasted by the east wind. The thin heads swallowed the healthy ones. Pharaoh awoke again, his spirit shaken. By morning, his palace buzzed with murmurs. Pharaoh summoned magicians, wise men, seers. He told them his dreams, but none could interpret. The court stood powerless before the riddles of heaven. Then the cupbearer remembered. A spark lit in his mind, shame burning his cheeks. He bowed before Pharaoh. Today I am reminded of my faults. When Pharaoh was angry with me and the chief baker, we were imprisoned. There, a young Hebrew interpreted our dreams, and everything happened exactly as he said. I was restored. The baker was executed. Pharaoh's eyes narrowed with urgency. Bring him. The command tore through the prison. Chains were struck off. Joseph was hurried out, shaved, washed and clothed in fresh garments. From the darkness of the dungeon, he was led to the blinding light of Pharaoh's court. Pharaoh's throne towered above, flanked by gold and guarded by soldiers. The air was thick with incense. Courtiers whispered as Joseph entered. He was no priest, no noble, just a Hebrew slave pulled from the pit. But his eyes held something steady, something Pharaoh could not ignore. I have dreamed a dream, Pharaoh said, his voice trembling, and there is none to interpret it. I am told that you can. Joseph bowed his head. His reply was not the answer of a desperate man, but of one anchored in faith. I cannot, he said. The court gasped at his audacity. But Joseph lifted his eyes. God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. The silence deepened. Pharaoh leaned forward and told Joseph the dreams in detail. Joseph listened, his heart stirred by the Spirit. Then he spoke. The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance will come throughout Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow, so severe that the abundance will be forgotten. The reason the dream was given twice is because the matter is firmly decided by God, and he will do it soon. Pharaoh's face hardened with concern, but Joseph continued. Now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners to collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of abundance. Store the grain under Pharaoh's authority and keep it in the cities for food. This food will be a reserve for the 7 years of famine, so that the land may not perish, the court murmured. The magicians shifted uneasily. No one had spoken with such clarity, such authority. Pharaoh rose from his throne, his voice ringing like thunder through the hall. Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? He turned to Joseph. Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people will submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. In an instant, the prisoner became a prince. Pharaoh placed his signet ring on Joseph's finger, clothed him in fine linen, and hung a gold chain around his neck. He gave him a chariot, and the people cried before him, bowed the knee. The dungeon was behind him. The palace lay before him. The dreamer had stepped into destiny. The years of abundance passed like a golden tide across Egypt. Grain silos overflowed. Cities brimmed with food, and Joseph's wisdom became the lifeline of the kingdom. But just as God had revealed, the famine came. It swept across the lands like a devouring fire, leaving fields barren and bellies empty. Even distant nations felt its hunger, and among them was Canaan, where Jacob and his sons lived. News reached them that Egypt had grain. Desperation pushed the brothers to make the journey. They stood in the grand halls of Pharaoh's governor, unaware that the man before them, dressed in fine linen, speaking in the language of Egypt, was the brother they had betrayed. Joseph recognized them instantly. The years had not erased their faces, though time had carved lines into them. But they did not recognize him. He spoke through interpreters, his tone sharp, concealing the storm inside. Where do you come from? Joseph asked. From the land of Canaan, they answered, bowing low, to buy food. And in that moment, Joseph remembered his dreams. The sheaves bowing, the stars bending. What had once been ridiculed was unfolding before his very eyes. Yet the wound of betrayal had not vanished. He tested them, accused them of being spies, imprisoned them, and demanded Benjamin, the youngest, the brother of his own mother, be brought to Egypt. His heart ached, torn between justice and mercy, between vengeance and love. When Benjamin finally stood before him, Joseph's restraint broke. He excused himself and wept in a chamber alone. The years of silence, the weight of betrayal, the ache of longing. It poured out like a flood. He returned, his voice trembling. Send everyone out from me, he commanded. The room emptied, leaving only him and his brothers. Then he cried out with such force that the palace shook. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers froze, terror on their faces. Memories of the pit, the silver, the betrayal struck them like a blade. They could not speak. But Joseph drew near, tears on his cheeks. "Do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now the famine has ravaged the land, and for 5 more there will be no plowing or harvesting. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance." The brothers wept. Reuben, Judah, Simeon, all of them fell to their knees. The boy they had despised, the dreamer they had betrayed, now stood as their savior. But Joseph embraced them, one by one, the chains of guilt breaking under the weight of forgiveness. Word reached Jacob, who could scarcely believe that Joseph was alive. His heart, long heavy with grief, leapt again. "My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." The family moved to Egypt, settling in the land of Goshen. There, under Joseph's protection, they survived the famine. And so the seed of Israel was preserved, destined to grow into a nation as numerous as the stars. What began with betrayal ended with reconciliation. What was meant for evil became the very tool God used for good. The pit, the prison, the palace. Every step was woven into a story far greater than Joseph could have imagined. And as Joseph looked upon his family, safe and fed, he knew that the dreams of his youth had never been illusions. They had been glimpses of God's plan, a plan that turned pain into purpose, betrayal into blessing, and tears into triumph. If this story of Joseph touched your heart, subscribe to our channel. More incredible journeys from the Bible await, stories of men and women who faced trials, wept tears, but were never forgotten by God.